Hello Kitty World was the game that convinced me that Charactersoft was secretly one of the best publishers on the Famicom. Let's start up a game, and does this sound familiar? You might hear that and look at Hello Kitty floating up into the sky and think, they're really ripping off Balloon Fight here. And that would be wrong, because they're not ripping off Balloon Fight. Hello Kitty World is a sequel to Balloon Fight, and not an unofficial sequel to Balloon Fight. It is the sequel to Balloon Fight. Balloon Fight was one of the earliest Famicom games, and it was basically a recontextualized Joust, since HAL had created a port of that for Nintendo to try to sell Atari on distributing the Famicom in the United States. Come the Game Boy launch, Nintendo dusted off the concept again and handed it off to their second-party developer Paxsofnica for a sequel. They created Balloon Kid, which was an expansion of the Balloon Trip mode from the original Balloon Fight into a fully featured game. For some reason, Nintendo decided not to distribute Balloon Kid in Japan. But that's when Charactersoft had their big idea. What if, instead of making whole new games with the Sanrio characters, they just licensed good games and made new sequels to them? Well, there's a sequel sitting right there that nobody's using. Paxsofnica themselves changed out the characters, and that's where Hello Kitty World comes from. Nintendo did eventually release a version of this in Japan. It was a year 2000 release for the Game Boy Color via the Nintendo Power Service, where people would take special cartridges to kiosks to have games written to them. The plot is about as low stakes as it can get. Hello Kitty and Mimi were playing with Tippy, but Tippy got a bunch of balloons and floated off. The two sisters set off after the bear, and that's the plot. Every stage in Hello Kitty World scrolls right to left, and your goal is just to reach the end of the level. You mash the A button to gain a little bit of height and speed, and Hello Kitty has a lot of momentum to her. You can pick up a lot of speed, but if you want to move with any precision, you have to slow down, and that's easier said than done. The B button releases your balloons. There are some areas that are just too small for you to get into with a pair of balloons strapped to your back, and hitting B lets those go. If you don't have any balloons, then hitting the A button makes Hello Kitty jump. When you're on the ground, you can tap down to slowly inflate a balloon. It takes 5 taps to inflate one, so if you want to get back to full strength, you'll have to mash 10 times. Bumping into sharp objects will pop one of the balloons, and bumping into something dangerous like that when you have no balloons is fatal. There are a lot of obstacles in the game that if you just bump into them with Hello Kitty, instead of having them bump into her balloons, then she'll bounce back rather than having a balloon popped. Similar to the Balloon Trip mode in the original Balloon Fight, collecting 20 balloons without letting any go off the right-hand side of the screen will enhance the scoring on any balloons from that point on. In Hello Kitty World, this doubles them up. They become 2 balloons instead of a single one. And if you let one of these go by, then they return to just being solo balloons. Collect enough balloons, and a P will drift up from the bottom of the screen. Collecting that speeds up the scrolling, and makes Hello Kitty invincible. The invincibility lasts quite a while, too. There are 2 other things you'll spot on stages that you can collect. Blue orbs that are only worth a handful of points, and hearts that act as extra lives. There's an opportunity to earn additional extra lives behind the strawberry panels. Those take you to a bonus stage where you have to collect all of the balloons that appear before they disappear off the top of the screen, and if you do so, an extra life will emerge. These get more difficult with every one that you clear, so early on you won't have too much trouble, but after about 3 of them, you'll really have to work to catch those balloons. At the end of some stages there are bosses, and bosses have to be defeated by jumping on top of them. If you have balloons, Hello Kitty just doesn't have enough weight to hurt them. So when you get to these, you'll want to just release your balloons and start jumping. You start out with 5 lives and 0 continues, but you can earn up to a maximum of 5 continues through getting enough points. As you're playing the first 2 stages, this will seem pretty generous, and then Hello Kitty World sticks the knife in and starts twisting. Hello Kitty World is infamously difficult, to the point that some people consider it unbeatable. Now obviously it's not. In fact, I wouldn't even call it extremely difficult. But doing well in this game requires that you are a master of its movement. The second boss in particular is a real wall to climb, as you have to jump on this shrimp's head as it's coming out of the water, but you also have to land on the platform after you bounce on it. And the bounce is tougher to control than it looks. You're not just going to be able to power your way through this one, and on the later levels, the gaps are tiny, obstacles are moving fast, and you might only have one chance to get through. That reputation for difficulty gives Hello Kitty World a bit of a mixed reputation in Japan. You've got people who will point to it as one of the brilliant hidden gems on the Famicom, and people who find it virtually unplayable. And I definitely come down on the hidden gem side. Balloon Fight and Joust have always been some of my favorites, and this is a really fun expansion on the concept. I think the biggest negative about the game is that the two-player mode is just alternating players. There's no head-to-head competition mode here. Overall though, Hello Kitty World is pretty good. And it's definitely not what you'd expect from a Hello Kitty game. Charactersoft is going to keep these high-quality hits coming too, though I think Hello Kitty World is their peak.